There is a city in the north of Italy that wakes up slowly. Before the traffic begins, before the shutters lift on the boutiques, before the espresso machines start to hiss, Milan lies still under a soft gray light. The fog rolls gently across the rooftops. Somewhere, a church bell rings, unhurried, patient, as if time here has always moved a little differently than the rest of the world. This is Milan, a city that does not shout, a city that whispers its wealth instead. For centuries, Milan has been a place of quiet power, not the loud power of ancient empires, but the steady power of merchants, bankers, and craftsmen. It is a city built on silk and stone, on finance and fabric, on the patient accumulation of beauty. Long before it became a capital of fashion, it was a capital of trade, sitting at the crossing point of roads that connected northern Europe to the Mediterranean. Merchants passed through here for 1,000 years, carrying wool, spices, dyes, and slowly, without anyone quite noticing, the city learned how to hold wealth quietly, the way a closed hand holds a coin. Today, in ways most visitors never notice, Milan is changing again. Slowly, carefully, almost invisibly, because right now, in apartments behind unmarked doors, in penthouses above ordinary-looking buildings, in courtyards hidden from the street, Europe's wealthiest families are quietly buying the city. Not with headlines, not with spectacle, but piece by piece, block by block, in a way so gentle that most Milanese people walking to work in the morning barely feel it happening at all. Let us walk through it together, slowly, as if we have all the time in the world. Begin in the early morning in the district of Brera. The cobblestones here are uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Ivy climbs the walls of old palazzos, their shutters painted in soft faded greens and warm ochres. A cat stretches on a windowsill. Somewhere, a violin is being practiced, the notes drifting out through an open window and settling over the quiet street like a blanket. Brera was once the artists' quarter. Painters lived here, students, poets, dreamers with very little money and a great deal of hope. The Academy of Fine Art still stands at its center, its courtyard filled with statues, watching over new generations of students who come here every year, carrying portfolios under their arms, believing, as young artists always do, that beauty can still change the world. But look closer now. Look at the doorways. Many of them have changed. The small artist ateliers of 40 years ago have become private galleries, boutique hotels, apartments with brass buzzers and no names on them at all. A two-bedroom home here, the kind an art teacher might have rented in the 1980s, now costs more than most people will earn in a decade. The buyers rarely appear in person. Their names are held by lawyers, by holding companies registered in Luxembourg or Dublin, by discreet family offices that manage fortunes the way a gardener tends a quiet orchard, without fuss, without noise, simply making sure the roots stay strong. Sometimes, if you are patient, you can catch a glimpse of them anyway. A dark car pausing outside a gated entrance. A housekeeper carrying fresh flowers through a side door. A light left on, just once, in a window that is usually dark. These are the only signs most people ever see. The rest happens somewhere else entirely, in the offices of notaries and tax advisors, in quiet meetings where numbers are discussed and buildings change hands without ever changing their quiet, sleepy faces on the street. Walk a little further, and the streets widen. The stone here grows newer. This is Porta Nuova, and it feels like stepping into a different century entirely. Here, glass towers rise into the pale sky, their surfaces reflecting clouds that drift slowly overhead. Between them stands a forest, not a park, but an actual vertical forest, trees and shrubs growing from balconies 80 meters above the ground. In the wind, the leaves rustle softly against glass and steel. Birds nest here now, high above the traffic, in a forest that did not exist 20 years ago, and now feels as natural as if it had always been there. This place was, once, a railway yard, gray, industrial, forgotten. Few people came here by choice. Then, slowly, patiently, over almost 2 decades, it became one of the most expensive addresses in continental Europe. Sovereign wealth funds from the Gulf helped build it. Private equity from London and New York quietly financed its towers. And now, the apartments inside sell not to families looking for a home, but to buyers looking for a vault. A safe, beautiful, climate-controlled place to store wealth, 40 floors above the noise of the city. At night, the windows of these towers glow gold and warm, but if you look carefully, for many months of the year, most of them stay dark, empty, waiting, owned, but not lived in. A city of light, with no one home. There is a stillness to that thought, a quiet sadness, if you let yourself feel it. Homes built for living, standing empty, simply because they are safe places to keep money. Not far from these towers, a smaller neighborhood called Isala sits quietly in their shadow. Once a working-class district of small factories and modest apartment blocks, Isala still carries the feeling of an older Milan. Laundry hanging between buildings, small family-run bars where the same regulars have gathered every morning for 30 years. But the shadow of the towers is long, and it grows longer every year. Rents here have climbed steadily, chasing the glass and steel next door, and the workshops that once filled the ground floors are slowly being replaced by design studios and coffee shops with prices that feel imported from somewhere else entirely. Not far from Porta Nuova, another neighborhood has risen in recent years, one called CityLife, built on the site of what was once Milan's old trade fairgrounds. 3 towers stand here now, each designed by a different world-famous architect, each curving upward in its own distinct shape, one twisting gently like a helix, one leaning with quiet confidence, one rising straight and proud toward the sky. Beneath them spreads a wide pedestrian park, its lawns carefully tended, its benches occupied in the late afternoon by nannies pushing strollers and elderly couples walking arm in arm. It is beautiful here, genuinely, quietly beautiful. Children run across the grass while their parents watch from calf terraces nearby, sipping coffee slowly, unhurried. And yet, if you ask who lives in the towers themselves, the answer becomes harder to find. Many of the upper floors are owned by international buyers who visit only a handful of weeks each year, drawn by the same discretion, the same safety, the same quiet promise that Milan seems to offer to those with enormous fortunes. The park below is full of life. The towers above are often nearly empty. 2 versions of the same place, existing side by side, rarely overlapping at all. Nearby, an international school has expanded twice in the last decade, its classrooms filled increasingly with the children of relocated executives and finance professionals. Taught in English, sometimes never learning more than a few words of Italian at all, despite growing up entirely within the city's borders. It is a small detail, easy to overlook, but it tells its own quiet story. A generation of children raised in Milan, surrounded by its beauty, and yet strangely distant from it, insulated within a world of private drivers and gated courtyards, never quite touching the Milan that exists just beyond their windows. Let us move on, gently, toward the center of the city, toward the golden rectangle, as Milanese people call it, the Quadrilatero della Moda, Via Montenapoleone, Via della Spiga, streets so narrow you could almost touch both sides with your arms outstretched, yet lined with some of the most expensive storefronts on earth. Here, the light falls differently. It reflects off polished marble floors inside boutiques, off gold letters spelling out names known across the entire world. The scent of leather and fresh flowers drifts from doorways. Doormen in soft gray uniforms stand quietly beside revolving doors, greeting only those who are expected. This small cluster of streets, barely the size of a few city blocks, generates more retail revenue per square meter than almost anywhere else on the continent. Fashion houses that were founded generations ago by tailors and seamstresses now belong to vast holding groups, many of them controlled by just a handful of European billionaire families. Their names appear on magazine covers and on the sides of buildings, but rarely in the news for the buildings themselves, the real estate, quietly purchased, floor by floor, storefront by storefront, until entire streets are owned not by dozens of independent shopkeepers, but by 2 or 3 enormous conglomerates. It happened slowly enough that no one really noticed the moment it changed. That is often how it happens. Quietly, patiently, like water shaping stone. In recent years, the competition for these storefronts has grown so intense that rents on Via Montenapoleone now rank among the highest in the entire world. Higher, in some measurements, than Fifth Avenue in New York or Bond Street in London. Fashion houses no longer simply rent these spaces. They buy the entire buildings above them, penthouses included, turning storefronts into flagship fortresses that will never again change hands to an outsider. Ownership, once scattered among many small families, has quietly consolidated into the hands of very few. If you keep walking, past the boutiques, past the doorman, you will eventually reach the Duomo, Milan's great cathedral, its spires reaching upward like frozen lace against the sky. Pigeons circle above the square. Sunlight, when it appears, catches the white marble and turns it almost golden. Tourists gather here with their cameras, unaware, mostly, of the quiet economic story unfolding in the buildings just beyond the piazza's edge. Above the shops surrounding the Duomo, apartments that once housed Milanese families for generations have become something else. Short-term rentals, investment units, homes bought not to be lived in, but to be rented out to tourists for a few nights at a time, generating steady income for owners who may never once set foot inside. The families who used to live here have largely moved outward, toward the edges of the city, toward the suburbs, priced out of the very center their grandparents once called home. It is a gentle kind of displacement. No eviction notices taped angrily to doors. No dramatic protests, most of the time. Just rent increasing, slowly, year after year, while staying is simply no longer possible. Let us slow down here and sit with that for a moment. Because behind every empty apartment, every quiet transaction, every unnamed buyer, there is a human story too. A grandmother who spent 60 years in a third-floor apartment near the Duomo, moving now to a small flat outside the city because she can no longer afford the building she raised her children in. A young couple who grew up in Brera, watching the neighborhood of their childhood become a neighborhood they can only visit, never live in again. This is not a story of villains and victims. Not entirely. It is more complicated than that. It is the story of a beautiful city becoming, slowly, kind of vault. A place where wealth feels safe. And safety, it turns out, has a cost that is paid quietly, by people who were never part of the transaction at all. Before we reach the water, let us pause for a moment near Piazza Affari, Milan's financial heart, where the stock exchange building stands behind a massive sculpture of a hand, its middle finger raised toward the sky. A piece of public art that still divides opinion among the people who pass it every day. Inside the buildings surrounding this square, quiet men and women in tailored suits move through revolving doors, carrying leather portfolios, speaking softly into phones held close to their ears. This is where much of the paperwork behind Milan's transformation is actually written. Not in the apartments themselves, but here, in glass offices 11 floors above the street, where wealth managers and tax consultants spend their days moving money as gently as a hand moves water, careful never to make a splash. Many of these offices now belong to family offices, private firms established by a single wealthy family to manage its fortune across generations. There are, by some estimates, dozens of these family offices now operating quietly out of Milan, more than almost any other city in the country. They rarely advertise. They rarely appear in the press. Their entire purpose, in many ways, is to remain invisible, to grow wealth so quietly that even close neighbors might never guess the true scale of what sits behind an ordinary-sounding company name on a brass plaque beside a doorway. It is a strange kind of power, this invisibility. A single family office might quietly control dozens of apartments across Brera, Porta Nuova, and the Golden Rectangle, might own storefronts along Via Montenapoleone, might hold shares in fashion houses and hotels and vineyards across the Italian countryside. And yet, walk past its office door, and you would see nothing at all. Just a name, just a buzzer, just silence. Now, let us drift toward the water, toward the Navigli, Milan's old canal district, in the golden hour just before sunset. The canals here were built centuries ago, engineered in part by Leonardo da Vinci himself, designed to bring goods and marble into the city by boat. Today, the water moves slowly, reflecting the warm light of the setting sun, rippling gently as a small boat drifts past beneath a stone bridge. Ivy hangs over the water's edge. String lights are strung between buildings, waiting for evening to arrive. This was once a working-class neighborhood, home to laundresses, laborers, small workshops that line the water's edge. The buildings are low here, painted in faded terracotta and dusty yellow, with wrought iron balconies and shutters that have not been replaced in decades. But change has arrived here too, gently, the way a tide arrives, almost too slow to notice until suddenly the water is at your feet. Old workshops have become wine bars. Small apartments have been combined into larger, more expensive lofts. Buyers from Northern Europe, drawn by the charm of the canals, have begun purchasing entire buildings, restoring them beautifully, and then renting them out at prices the original residents could never afford. There is something bittersweet about walking here in the evening light. The beauty is real. The restoration is often genuinely careful and respectful of the architecture's history. And yet, the soul of a neighborhood is not only its walls. It is the people who fill them. And slowly, gently, those people are being replaced. Further along the canal, past the last of the tourist crowds, the water grows quieter still. And here, you can sometimes see an old fisherman's net still hanging from a wall, forgotten, a relic of a trade that vanished from this waterway a century ago. It hangs there like a small, patient reminder that this place was once something entirely different, something slower, something built for work rather than leisure. Few people notice it, fewer still ask why it remains. As evening settles fully over the city, let us rise above it for a moment, imagining the view from one of those glass towers in Porta Nuova, looking out across the rooftops as the lights begin to flicker on. From above, Milan looks endless, a patchwork of terracotta roofs, church spires, quiet courtyards hidden from the street below, the green ribbon of parks weaving through the gray stone. It is easy, from this height, to forget the human scale of everything happening below. The families moving out, the names of buyers hidden behind holding companies, the empty apartments glowing or not glowing in the dark. Milan has always been a city of careful appearances. Even its wealth has traditionally hidden itself, preferring quiet elegance over loud display. The Milanese have a phrase for it sometimes: faire le cose in punta di piedi, to do things on the tips of your toes, quietly, without waking anyone. Perhaps that is why this transformation has moved so gently, so gradually. It fits the character of the city itself. Milan does not announce its changes. It simply becomes something new, one closed door at a time, one quiet transaction at a time, until one day, the city looking back at you in the mirror is not quite the one you remember. There are reasons behind all of this, of course. Reasons beyond simple desire for beauty. Italy has, in recent years, offered generous tax incentives to wealthy foreigners who relocate here, a flat tax on foreign income that has drawn bankers from London, industrialists from Russia, entrepreneurs from across the globe, all quietly choosing Milan as a base, not only for its beauty, but for its financial advantages. Real estate here, compared to London or Paris or Zurich, still feels, to those with enormous fortunes, remarkably affordable. And so the buying continues, gently, steadily, like rain that never quite stops falling. The mechanics of it are almost invisible to an outsider. A private bank in Geneva quietly recommends Milan to a client seeking a second European base. A tax advisor in London draws up the paperwork for relocation. A real estate agent, speaking softly in 3 or 4 languages, arranges private viewings of apartments that were never advertised publicly at all. These transactions rarely appear in newspapers. They happen in conference rooms with soft lighting and glasses of sparkling water, decided in minutes, finalized in weeks, and settled quietly into the fabric of the city forever. Meanwhile, across the city, ordinary rents have risen faster than wages. Young Milanese professionals, teachers, nurses, university graduates find themselves priced out of neighborhoods their families have lived in for generations. Some move to the outer suburbs, to districts like Certosa or Baggio, where the architecture is plainer, the streets a little wider, the rent still, for now, within reach. Others leave Milan entirely, drawn to smaller, quieter cities where an apartment does not cost half a lifetime's savings. It would be easy to tell this story with anger, but that is not quite the right tone for Milan. This is a city that prefers subtlety to outrage, quiet observation to loud protest. And so, instead, let us simply notice. Let us walk a little further, into the last light of the evening, and see what remains. Return, for a moment, to Brera, now lit by soft golden street lamps. A small trattoria has opened its doors, the smell of garlic and butter drifting into the street. An elderly man sits alone at a corner table, a glass of wine in front of him, watching the street the way he has watched it for 60 years. He remembers when this street was full of painters. He remembers when rent was something a teacher could afford. He does not seem angry, only thoughtful, only present, in a moment that will not last forever. His name, if you asked him, is Alberto. He has lived above this trattoria since he was a boy. His father ran a small frame shop 2 doors down, where painters used to bring their canvases to be finished before exhibitions. The frame shop closed years ago. Now, in its place, there is a private art consultancy, its windows tinted, its door usually locked, opening only for clients who have made an appointment in advance. Alberto does not know exactly who owns it. He only knows that the smell of varnish and sawdust that once filled that doorway has been replaced by something cooler, quieter, and altogether unfamiliar. This, perhaps, is the quiet truth at the heart of Milan's transformation. Cities have always changed. They have always been shaped by wealth, by trade, by the people who arrive and the people who leave. Milan itself was built on centuries of exactly this kind of change. Silk merchants replacing farmers, industrialists replacing merchants, each generation reshaping the city in its own image. What is happening now is, in some ways, simply the newest chapter in a very old story. And yet, there is something different about this chapter. The wealth flowing into Milan today does not always stay to build something new. Sometimes it simply arrives, purchases, and waits. Buildings as investments, apartments as vaults, a city slowly becoming less a place to live and more a place to own. Consider, for a moment, the art world that surrounds all of this. Milan hosts one of the largest art fairs in Europe each spring, drawing collectors from every corner of the globe. During that week, hotel prices double, sometimes triple. Private jets line the runway at Linate Airport, arriving quietly, almost apologetically, as if trying not to disturb the calm. Collectors move through gallery openings and soft murmurs, admiring canvases that will, within days, disappear into private storage facilities on the outskirts of the city. Climate-controlled warehouses built specifically to hold paintings that may never be seen by the public again. Art, like real estate, has become another quiet vault, another way of holding beauty without ever quite living inside it. There is a strange symmetry to this. If you sit with it long enough, the empty apartment and the stored painting are not so different from one another. Both are beautiful, both are valuable, and both, in their own way, are hidden from the world that made them precious in the first place. As night falls fully over Milan, the Duomo is lit from below, its white marble glowing softly against the dark sky. Tourists gather in the piazza, taking photographs, unaware of everything we have walked through together tonight. And perhaps that is all right. Perhaps beauty does not need to explain itself to be beautiful, but if you listen closely, in the quiet hours after midnight, when the shops have closed and the streets have emptied, you can almost hear the city breathing, in, out, slow, patient, the way it always has. Walk once more, in this final quiet hour, past the Sforza Castle, its red brick walls standing solid against the darkness, unmoved by 5 centuries of change. Dukes once ruled from behind these walls. Armies once marched beneath its towers. Now, tourists photograph its silhouette against the evening sky, and joggers pass along its moat in the early morning, breathing steadily, their footsteps the only sound for streets around. The castle has seen empires rise and fall. It has seen plague and famine and rebuilding. Whatever is happening now in glass towers and golden rectangles is simply the latest ripple in a very long river. Milan has survived plague, war, occupation, and reconstruction. It has been ruled by Spanish viceroys, French emperors, and Austrian dukes. It has watched empires rise and fall from behind its quiet stone walls. Whatever is happening now, however this new chapter unfolds, Milan will likely still be standing centuries from now, still whispering rather than shouting, still hiding its wealth and its wounds behind elegant, unmarked doors. Perhaps the lesson here is not about anger, or blame, or simple villains. Perhaps it is only this, that beauty, when it becomes only a possession, begins to lose something of its soul. That a city is not truly a city unless people can afford to live inside it, to grow old inside it, to raise their children inside it, the way that man in the trattoria has done, quietly, for 60 years. Before we return to the center, let us travel briefly outward, past the ring road, into the quieter suburbs where much of Milan's working population now lives. Here, the buildings grow plainer, built in the concrete optimism of the 1960s and 70s, when Italy's economy was booming and factory jobs seemed endless. The balconies are smaller here, the paint is more faded, but the streets are full of life in a different way. Children cycling home from school, elderly women carrying grocery bags up narrow staircases, the smell of Sunday lunch drifting from open windows on a warm afternoon. This is, in many ways, the Milan that keeps the rest of the city running. The nurses who staff its hospitals, the teachers who fill its classrooms, the waiters who carry plates through the trattorias of Brera each evening before returning, by metro, to homes nearly an hour away. They rarely appear in the postcards. They rarely appear in the property listings glowing softly on agency websites. And yet without them, the beautiful, quiet, glowing city at the center would not be able to function for even a single day. Some urban planners have begun to speak, cautiously, about what comes next, about policies that might slow the transformation, rent controls, restrictions on short-term rentals, incentives for long-term residents rather than international investors. Milan City Council has debated these ideas in quiet chambers, much the way the city seems to debate everything, without spectacle, without shouting, weighing carefully what kind of place it wants to become. No one yet knows how the story will end. Perhaps no city's story ever truly ends. It simply continues, one quiet chapter folding gently into the next. There is still a Milan beneath all of this. A Milan of small bakeries opening before dawn, their windows fogged with warmth, the smell of fresh bread drifting into empty streets. A Milan of grandmothers hanging laundry between buildings, humming softly to themselves. A Milan of children playing football in small piazzas, their laughter echoing off stone walls that have heard laughter like it for centuries. This Milan has not disappeared. It simply grows quieter, year by year, pressed gently toward the edges, the way a tide slowly reshapes a shoreline without ever announcing its intentions. Perhaps, in the end, both versions of the city are true at once. The Milan of glass towers and unnamed buyers, and the Milan of bakeries and grandmothers and children playing in the last light of evening. Perhaps every great city carries these two truths together, one quietly overlapping the other, like two photographs taken of the same street 100 years apart. As we leave Milan tonight, let the image stay with you gently. The fog over the rooftops in early morning, the ivy on old stone walls, the glass towers glowing gold at dusk, the empty windows, dark, waiting, the old man with his glass of wine, watching a street he no longer fully recognizes, but loves all the same. Cities are, in the end, simply mirrors of what we value. Milan is showing us, quietly, patiently, on the tips of its toes, exactly what the world has chosen to value in this moment. Beauty, safety, discretion, wealth, held gently, without fingerprints. Whether that is a story of loss, or simply a story of change, is perhaps not for any single voice to decide. It is something each of us must sit with, quietly, the way Milan itself seems to sit with it every evening, as the light fades slowly over its rooftops, and the bells, somewhere in the distance, ring softly, marking the passage of another day. Somewhere in the darkness, a shutter closes softly on a shop along Via Montenapoleone. Somewhere else, a light switches on in a small kitchen in the outer suburbs, where a family is only now sitting down to dinner after a long day. Somewhere above Porta Nuova, a single window glows in an otherwise dark tower, and no one below will ever know who is standing behind it, looking out at the city the same way we have looked at it tonight. These small moments, scattered across the darkness, are what a city truly is. More than its glass towers, more than its golden storefronts, more than the quiet fortunes hidden behind unmarked doors. A city is simply millions of small lights, some near, some far, each one holding a life that matters just as much as any other. Milan will keep changing, the way every living city changes, slowly, patiently, on the tips of its toes. New towers will rise, old doorways will close, families will arrive, and families will leave, the way the tide arrives and leaves the shore, reshaping it so gently that only time itself can measure the difference. And long after tonight, long after this quiet walk together has ended, the fog will still roll over the rooftops in the early morning, and the bells will still ring, somewhere in the distance, patient and unhurried, exactly as they always have. Thank you for walking through Milan with me tonight. Rest well, and may your own home, wherever it is, always remain a place where you truly belong.